Hello, and welcome to this FCSI panel session on the future of ventless food service, which is very kindly sponsored by the Middleby Corporation. So thank you to them, and thank you for joining us for this session, which will last for approximately 40 minutes. I'm Michael Jones, editorial director of FCSI's Food Service Consultant magazine, and on our panel today, I have the great pleasure of introducing two FCSI professional members, Bircham FCSI of Humble Arnold Associates, and Julian Edwards FCSI of GY5 Limited, plus Josh Pell, SVP of Global Hospitality, Strategy, Planning and Development at Oakview Group, and on the end, Scott Heim, President of Middleby Ventless Solutions and Evo America. A superb panel to address a weighty subject that's going to play a very big part in the future of food service, ventless cooking solutions. So, gentlemen, before I give an overview of the topic we're going to discuss today, could you just take a few moments to tell the audience a little bit about yourself and your area of business? Ed, let's start with you first.
Hello there, Ed Bircham, Humble Arnold Associates, design director of the business. We're a food service design consultant based in London. Our focus is primarily resort, five-star hotel work, corporate workplace, and fine dining restaurants working in the UK but internationally. We also have a separate sub-office down in Johannesburg that helps support our work throughout the world.
Great stuff. Thank you, Ed. Josh?
Yeah, hi, everybody. Josh Pell, Oakview Group. So Oakview Group, a lot of people don't know about, but we're a global development company that builds arenas primarily. We do music booking, parking, security, and luckily for me, food service, so I have a job to go to every day. But primarily design for myself and delivery, which means everything we do on the design and architect side, that we can deliver it and deliver the proper turnover that we need financially. And this is globally, so UK, Europe, Middle East now, South America, North America, a huge presence, and into Canada. And we just continue to build. We have 7 arenas that we own and over 400 different accounts globally that we operate in.
Huge operation. Thank you, Josh. Julian?
I'm not so international. I'm based mostly in the UK. I'm working out of London. I tend to have a split agenda with food service. I spend a lot of time with management consulting, so I deal a lot with caterers, help them in terms of delivering a good standard. So I'm all about food safety, allergen safety, and essentially having a very healthy meal on a plate. So sustainability, etc. Design and planning, we get involved with several projects per annum, where I bring the creative element and the system. So if you give me a footprint, I'll say, well, we want to walk in here, we want to put some food here, we want to cook here. We decide how we're cooking, whether that's going to be integrating some sophisticated extraction system or maybe ventless, there are applications, through to how food is sold, presented, and then wasted. So it combines the whole thing. So I guess in my contribution to food service is to take the caterer's perspective, the system approach, and then have that translated into the right equipment.
Fantastic. Speaking of equipment, Scott?
Scott Heim, I'm the president of Middleby's Ventless Cooking Solutions, and what I get to do, which is really the fun part of the job, is to work with the FCSI designers on some of these unique projects. And it's no surprise on this panel, it's the top hotels, it's the top restaurants, and it's the stadiums and arenas. So it's all the ways we can offer new cooking solutions and do it in an ventless solution.
Fantastic. Thank you, gentlemen. So today's panel session is going to address, I guess, 5 key areas. We're going to look at the which food service segments specifically are sparking to ventless action stations and where in the world that might be happening. The myths that are being dispelled, and also some of the genuine challenges that ventless presents, such as compliance issues, things like that. We'll look at the return on investment that ventless can deliver, and we'll look at things like cost comparisons. We'll look at how the global food service market is adapting to electrification mandates and how that impacts on ventless. And we'll look at some of the latest innovations in ventless as well. Scott, to kick things off, I think it'd be useful to just, if you could help set the scene and maybe give the audience just a quick overview of exactly maybe where ventless technology is at right now in its journey. So back in 2019, we hosted a panel here at Host on a very similar topic. What has changed, would you say, since then, post-COVID, and what is the sort of level of acceptance from the operator community towards ventless technology? Where are we at?
Really 3 key things. When we were sitting here on this panel 4 years ago, I was challenged by Armando Pucci about ventless is going forward. It's delivering a lot of fantastic new cooking attributes, but what about high volume ventless frying? We can't get the volume with the equipment. So 4 years ago, we started to work, and we do now have a brand new technology using ozone to obliterate the fats, the oils, and the grease, and we are able to say we now have ventless cooking solutions for high volume frying.
Yeah.
So now for any restaurant operator, whatever Julian's working on or Ed with hotels, you can now take a look at what's that operator's menu, what are the culinary demands, and there are no, and I want to stress, no limitations to what you can cook by using the ventless cooking solutions. And also, just at that panel meeting 4 years ago, we had no clue what would happen with COVID. And my gosh, as the panel goes on, we can discuss the huge implications, what have happened with grocery stores now competing with restaurants, with the stadiums and arenas now coming back full force after COVID. So we'll hit into more of those topics later.
Great stuff. Great summation. Thank you, Scott. Ed, from a consultant's point of view then, from your perspective, how much is that kind of technology that Scott's talking about, that innovation, how much is it already part of the mix of the operator clients that you're working with, and how much is it maybe honing into view?
I think there's long been an appetite for those solutions. There are a lot of constraints in a lot of buildings. We have been using ventless solutions for some time. I think in terms of front of house solutions, primarily in hotel resort operations, including some of your own product. We have used it in sort of finishing kitchen environments. Mm-hmm. And I think where we're looking at single appliances, where there's very focused cooking is where we've tended to employ it traditionally, where we've got larger volumes of cooking required, so more production facilities. Typically, we've always looked for traditional, fully vented solutions. I think even that is changing slightly because, and we were talking about this earlier, that there are opportunities for caterers to start operating out of spaces that have been closed to them, retail areas that have not adequate MEP provision. Architects, one of the first questions they want to know is how big's the ductwork, how big's the hole through my building? So that has closed off certain opportunities to operators that all of a sudden are starting to open up. So I think that is still embryonic, but we have been doing that for a period of time with competitor products in terms of full recirculation systems. So people are using it, but beyond those focused front of house areas, it's still a fallback position, and maybe that will change.
Okay, and just to interject on
Go.
that fallback, what Ed just said is absolutely critical as this industry is evolving. The headline with the ventless cooking solutions with an action station, we can now create pockets of revenue, F&B revenue, essentially anywhere. Even dead spaces now can become sources of revenue.
Fantastic. Julian, your perspective then as well, how are you seeing this kind of technology impacting projects you work on or might do in the future?
Yeah, and obviously not as extensive experience as Ed, but it's been on the agenda for many years, and you'll often find a kitchen that's at capacity with an existing extraction system. So you want to import some new combination cooking or anything that's giving off steam and fat, atmospheric oil, etc. So a single unit with a ventless capability is quite common when you needed to extend your production space. But if we, I guess the main attributes we think about with a kitchen design is what's going down in the drain and what's going out in the atmosphere. Yeah. And what's interesting with the dialogue about ventless kitchens is the fact that there seems to be more of an effort, converting the fat oils. You mentioned ozone, use of ozone, to destroy them. You hear that first from Middleby. And so you're looking at a situation whereby the technology and the thinking behind ventless cooking is really advanced. So it is considering capturing all the contaminants vertically and below, and making a far greater effort than what is traditionally extracted through a traditional ventilation. So we do have an interest in, I'm thinking of scenarios whereby you're looking at a very busy town centre operation where you do liaise with environmental health, which considers the atmosphere. So you have to think about noise attenuation and also the fumes you're giving off, especially at heavy industrial gas installation. and sometimes environmental health officers are not pleased with the efforts going on there, and you have to adapt certain methods of extraction, location. It's a very expensive thing. So it's good to see this.
Yeah.
And I think ventless definitely has a marketplace, and we'll see a lot more of it for lots of good reasons. Very pleased with the effort companies like Middleby are putting into technologically making it as safe a waste product, up or down, as possible. Lessons there can be shared to the traditional ventilation industry. But in my humble world at the moment, there's still a way to go where there could be that as an exclusive option. I see it more as a combination option to extend the kitchen area at the moment, and as I say, some built-up areas. But my final concern is to have the testing capacity on waste out vertically and above, to ensure that that is as particulate free as possible for the wider planetary and green credentials. But it's all good stuff.
Great stuff. Thank you, Julian. Josh, let's get the operator perspective here. How are you utilising ventless technology? And kind of what success have you had with it, but also maybe what challenges have you had with it along the way?
It's a great question. I mean, I've used it for years, and mostly based in the U.S. and now working in the U.K. and the different areas I mentioned earlier. I think for me, it's the ability to be fully creative and not have to worry about to the point of what's going through my ceiling. So I can put upfront cooking, which we know more and more now is what people want to see, right? They want to know it's fresh. They want to see the action. They pay extra for that. They see the quality. I think when you're looking at it from something like myself, when you have a building that exists, you're taking away barriers of infrastructure, right? You need power. You need the things that you need, but it's much easier to take a counter and put in a fryer or a grill or these types of things. And this technology has been around for a long time. I actually was in a building. I used to be in Major League Baseball, and there's a building in San Diego built in 2004, Major League Baseball Stadium, that had the ovens all throughout the building. When I came in 2014, they had never used them. And I kept wondering to myself, why are they not using these fantastic things? They're the same ones that you would see in the time in Subway and these other venues. And so I actually refurbished them, and we used them and dropped our food costs because we could build quicker meals, drop our costs down, and really give customers, or in my case, clients, what they wanted. Now designing for Oakview Group, for OVG, there's things that I don't even consider a traditional pizza oven much anymore. I go straight to a Turbo Chef. I go straight to an Evo Grill because I can bring it out and I can show people that this food is, I'm grilling burgers fresh. I can put, not to give Le Creuset a plug, but I put Le Creuset pots and pans on those Evo Grills and use it from our serving vessels. And I've taken away from the infrastructure and the MEP side, they don't have to worry about this really expensive ductwork. And I think, it's mostly just getting people over the fact that it's not a microwave, right? It's not just cheap things that go through it. We're putting Michelin star, James Beard award-winning recipes through these, different things. So I think it's just getting over the hurdle of people's mindset of what they can do. And it's a lot of art form and fun that I think you create. And that's what designers and architects like to do.
Yeah.
Utilize this stuff to make that happen.
Fantastic. Great stuff, Josh. Thank you. Scott, we've heard that from Josh about the uses for OVG and the stadium they're operating, their operations. What other selling segments of the market would you say are investing in ventless technology at the moment? Could you also talk a little bit geographically about where the interest is at the moment and where you see it growing?
Again, great questions. And the stadiums and arenas are the hot area, but I'm going to go back to one of the opening comments that Ed talked about with the hotels. All hotels have fantastic kitchen setups, but it's all about the experience, just like what you just heard Josh talk about, making sure that the fans see the excitement, they see the freshness of being cooked in front. It's the same for the hotels. The Hyatts, the Fairmonts, the Four Seasons, the Marriotts, they've got the great kitchens, but they're putting these ventless action stations up front because, number one, it reinforces the freshness message. Number two, the culinary staff gets to interact with the guests. It makes it for a fun experience. So the hotels and restaurants setups are now going more and more ventless. But as I mentioned, during COVID, what happened in COVID, restaurants worldwide were either shut down or low yield. So where did all the consumers go to get their food? They went to the grocery stores. And the forward-thinking grocery stores were able to say, you know what? Let's go after that 10 or 15 US dollar meal ring, create the prepared meals as you've got the captive audience there in the grocery store. That's been a real change, and it's also been very receptive to our ventless cooking.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of geography, I'll almost call it the ventless vexations. We're seeing real developments in North America. Josh can attest to what we've been able to do at stadiums and arenas. I've already mentioned grocery stores. But there's a reluctance or maybe a bit of a black cloud about ventless capabilities. Maybe it's the compliance. Maybe it's the authorities having jurisdiction in the UK and in Europe. But there are real opportunities in this market, and then we see things opening in the Middle East as well. But it's all about education, and it's all about working with the FCSI design community.
Josh, OVG has obviously a footprint in Europe as well as in the US. Are you seeing change coming to an appetite for ventless in Europe increasing? How are you seeing that change?
Yeah, no, I think it's the exact same, no matter where you're at geographically, you have this need for a solution and, cost and again, the ductwork. I do think that no matter where you're at, and I'm experiencing this right now, is we have a building in Manchester at Co-op Live where we have this technology spec'd out. And in the U.S., we have, I would say in the U.S., most sports stadiums now, and Scott obviously knows it very well, has a ventless grill or fryer that's happening in almost all professional sports stadiums currently. The one thing, though, and I'll tell a fast story, we have a building in Austin, Texas called the Moody Center. It's a music capital right now for us. It's a fantastic venue. There are 12 ventless Evo grills in the building, all up front cooking. This was in the design for 3 years. About 2 weeks prior to our opening, and I'm in hard hat and the PPE from the ground up. I'm the safety VP for the University of Texas, who's our partner, says, "Oh, you can't use these." And we're ready to open the doors in 2 weeks. And he goes, "We have that over at the football stadium, and we had a fire last year, and we don't want these. You can't use them. It's got to have an extract." So I said, "Can I see what you have over at the football stadium?" So I'm walking through the football stadium. Players are practicing. I have a PPE and a hard hat on, and I'm been working on a construction site all day. And they take me to the kitchen, a competitor of ours, so I won't mention the name of who operated the football stadium. And it wasn't a ventless grill. It was a traditional grill.
Right.
And they said, "We had a fire on this last year." And I'm like, "Okay, there's extract above it. There's Ansel system. This is just a flat grill. This isn't what we have in there." And I had to take them back, point everything out. And they said, "Okay, we'll let you do this, but we have to have fire watch for the first 4 events." So we had to pay firefighters in the U.S. in the city of Austin to come watch our cooking with walkie-talkies and radios. And after the 4th event, they went, "Yeah, I don't see the issue here." And I said, "Thank you. Can you guys get it? I don't want to pay for this anymore. Go away. We need to operate." But I think for us that, the same has sort of happened to us in Manchester, where everybody's a bit afraid of this, saying, "There's no way. You're creating grease. You're doing," and I'm saying, that's not true. Here's the documentation. And so for a lot of it, it's education to get just people thinking more about this stuff that's also changing and getting better and better, to Scott's point, right? We're talking about ozone now and these things is pretty fantastic.
So it's a kind of capturing hearts and minds of people and taking a bit of a journey, an education journey. Anything to say about that side of things, about how you educate the market?
Again, it's Josh just described. It's education. There's this feeling, there's risk, there's unknown. And if you don't know something, you're not comfortable with it, you're going to resist it, you're going to push back. So it's all about education. And it's also why, and it's not just Middleby, I have to admit a lot of our manufacturer competitors are doing test kitchens. However, we want to do the test kitchens to allow the culinary staff to come in and actually cook and get the experience. And it also means with FCSI designers, we have to be the resource. Just like Josh had the issue with Austin, Texas, we aren't throwing the issue back to all the FCSI designers. If there is an authority having jurisdiction that's going to challenge that piece of equipment, talk to us. We've usually got the experience somewhere in North America. We've got 98 tough jurisdictions that have all approved different ventless solutions. We just need to get that education, get that confidence level up in the UK, the Europe, and the Middle East as well.
Right, thank you, Scott. Julian, just picking up on a point that Scott made earlier about grocery chains and maybe smaller retailers picking up some market share here from maybe the fast casual chains. By using ventless technology. Do you see that as an opportunity in Europe? Could that take off in the UK? Is that...
If if you've got a catering installation, which is going to be the cost of which is going to significantly reduce because we're not building extensive chimneys and rooftop extraction air conditioning systems, then that's going to make that far more accessible to the smaller independent and could be a great solution. I wonder also, I say we're here talking today, but it's learning every second. Hopefully everybody in the audience is learning as well. I've learned loads just this morning. We are very interested in kitchens in the respect of not as making it as easy as possible for staff and personnel who work there. It's a stressful environment. It's it's a bit, I mean, I'm from Wales. You know, coal mining is in my family, and you know, we used to. I've never actually been down a pit, but I used to deliver coal before I was the chef in the afternoon. That's a true story. So I used to intensive working. So I'm curious about the environment that a chef is working. It's very important they have a reasonably good atmosphere and temperature and condition to work in. But one thing what strikes me now is that certainly with our working groups in sustainability within FCSI in UK and across the Europe and the world is about sustainable working practice and equipment. So not just where we're growing the food, it's how we're cooking it. So there seems to be a very big thread now and common theme that we're moving more away from gas to electrical, and you mentioned earlier electrification and cooking. So that's the direction. So if we look at a classic gas cooker, we're looking at carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide. I'd expect to see some detectors in certain applications for those. So if we're taking those two bad elements out of the equation as well, that's another good reason to support a more bespoke self-ventilation, which then is concentrating on steam. You get a lot of fat deposits in the steam. That's the one that congeals and collects in a normal extract unit. So we're reducing the real deadly, noxious, toxic gases, which is a good thing in the future. So therefore, that's another. So the entire installation adds an equipment and a separate extraction. Compare that cost to a standalone system with its own extraction, and then taking out the carbons in terms of monoxide and dioxide. So it's all a bit of a winner. Yeah. City, I'm selling it now. It's good. Yeah, anyway. So, which is not what we're here for. We're here to question and challenge, which we still do. You know, we still look at all these things, and it really does apply in certain events. And also, you know, it's when you look at front of house demonstration, kitchen work, mobile equipment, for example, to have a station that is a wok frying with its own self-ventilating system. See a lot of these in the quite expensive domestic kitchens where you've literally got a grid on your cooking island. It's sucking everything down. It's very clever, very mod, very cool. So there are plenty of applications that exist at the moment for temporary locations, etc. So, yeah, so I'm never not a fan of it. It's just, but I do believe we will see more of this.
Yeah. Your point there, Julian, about the consultant's role to question and challenge. Ed, from your perspective, Josh told that fantastic story earlier about the compliance issues and regulatory issues. Are those issues still worrying designers like yourself, the operators that you're working with in Europe and the Middle East, or are you seeing that change? And also, what's driving that change?
I think those concerns do remain. Absolutely, I think we're still at the start of a journey. Yeah, you know, we're not the fastest moving industry in the world. The journey, you know, we've been doing this ourselves. We've been putting these type of systems in for 10 years, but that's still quite early on. And I think the compliance sometimes takes a little time to catch up. So there are compliance issues. There are still genuine code issues. You know, so in the UK where we're DW172, there is still a certain requirement for air changes in that space. And I think we were talking earlier, you know, what is ventless? Because I think to call anything ventless is a bit of a misnomer. I think there are still ventilation requirements. What it is doing is trying to get rid of those highly onerous kitchen extract components. And I think when you're working around the world, and there are lots of different local authorities you've got to deal with, and those people have only been working in a certain way for 50, 60 years, you are having to sell that every single time for every project, then it is a concern. that you're going to go through exactly what Josh has been through on a number of sites. So that is a concern. I think fire safety is a concern. Everyone knew what they were doing. You're putting a big canopy above. You're putting a nice big Ansel system above. How are we going to be dealing with that with some of these very open solutions? So I think that is something that people need to consider. I think cooling of spaces. So we were moving air through the space, and now we're moving less air through the space. So occupancy. I think there is a synergy with what is happening in the marketplace in terms of the whole electrification piece.
Yeah.
I think that feeds into it, quite frankly. But yeah, those are concerns. I think noise. We're bringing all the plant into a kitchen. So some of the environments where we're working with operators, where you've got a front of house environment, fine in a stadium, where you've got a nice, quiet, very serene, fine dining environment in a resort, you might have more concerns about, what are the real acoustic considerations there. So yeah. But what are the drivers? The drivers are people have never wanted to see great big canopies above. People don't want to have to be doing all that duct cleaning, 2, 3, 4 times a year. People don't want the infrastructure cost of, protected ductwork through those spaces. And the buildings, they don't all necessarily stand it. We have spaces, as we were talking about earlier on, where you just cannot achieve that. And that may be the best space in a development from an F&B generation, revenue generation perspective. So those are the drivers. And it's quite exciting. But I think it will be a slow process as people learn what those opportunities are. And as Julian says, we're learning a lot today. This whole principle of having a system with ozone in it, absolutely fantastic, because, that improves the quality. And I think as well as the compliance, earlier on, as in all of these changes, earlier on in this whole journey, 10, 12 years ago, the solutions did not perform like they perform now, and that has a seed in people's head of what I knew 10 years ago, and that can colour people's judgment when actually you've got completely new, fresh technologies now.
Go, Scott.
Everything that Ed just said, I'm not contesting it at all. I'm just going to add another key benefit that a lot of people forget with ventless. What's the first thing the culinary staff does when they turn the equipment on to get ready for the breakfast day part? All the equipment is turned on. And what happens all day long, even that lull from breakfast to lunch, lunch to dinner, all that air-conditioned air is going up through a Type 1 hood. Conversely, during the winter, all that heated air is going up to that Type 1 hood. I'm not saying that the HVAC system doesn't have to be balanced for ventless, but we dramatically mitigate those utility costs. And back to the sustainability issues, it's going to become a bigger and bigger issue. A lot of people in FCSI design community has to be aware of the International Standards Board.
Yeah.
Right now they're split between San Francisco and London, but next year they're going to be based in Frankfurt, and they're insisting on sustainability initiatives being reported by publicly traded firms. You have to monitor and report energy use as well as other sustainability initiatives. So as you move more and more to ventless, that's another way to address the sustainability issues that publicly traded firms are going to have to report.
Scott, staying with you, as an extension of Ed's point about compliance is also on a journey, as well as operators, manufacturers, consultants alike. Are you seeing compliance officers and the kind of the regulatory side of things listening and also going on that journey? Are you seeing kind of change and acceptance coming with this technology?
Absolutely. And just to leave the food service business for just a little bit, everybody's heard what's happened in California with all the mandates when it comes to electric cars, that the cars have to be EV or hybrids by 2035. Well, as that was all going forward in the little city of Berkeley, California in 2019, they passed a ban, an ordinance that no new restaurants or major remodels could go forward with gas-powered equipment. And immediately after they passed that legislation, 30 to 33 other different metro areas in California matched it. Just last April, Orange County voted for the same area. The state of California now has 95, approaching 100 metro areas banning all the gas-powered equipment. It all has to be electric-powered. And as California was doing that, all of a sudden, Denver did it. Cook County in Chicago, Detroit, the home of the Detroit automobiles, they also banned it. And then New York City with LL 97, that legislation went into effect. It's the college towns in the U.S. And then you've got in the UK the extraction tax in all the metro areas in England, Scotland, and Wales.
Yeah.
These issues, these mandates are going to impact not just the automobile area or big corporations. It's going to impact the food service industry, and the FCSI design community needs to stay atop of all the different mandates that are being passed.
Fantastic, Scott. Thank you. Josh, let's talk a little bit about return on investment and the kind of value that you're getting back from this kind of technology. Do you want to talk a little bit about kind of cost comparisons and how you evaluate value?
I think everybody wants to save money, right, when they look at these things. And I think sometimes you see the price tag on something ventless and you kind of panic and say that's pretty high. I would tell you, if I'm opening a restaurant today, I'm going ventless just because I can't afford all the ductwork and the different things that go in. You know, for us, when you're building something like an arena or sports venue, you've got architects that make a really pretty picture and it's amazing. Like it's artwork, right? Now you got to actually operate it, and you start to put in kitchens, and you're saying to yourself, how do I get a duct up through here? What size fan? Exactly what you mentioned, Julian. And at the end of it, it's hundreds of thousands of pounds that go into this, and now you've got to hide it, by the way. It's behind a wall. Can't see it. And then people just automatically, in my world, think that everything in a venue doesn't taste good, that it's microwaved or it's pre-prepared. And especially, I think, in Europe, I've actually been told multiple times now, don't build it because nobody eats or drinks at a venue anyways. And I'm saying to myself, well, that's my job to get them to eat and drink as much as I can. So, you know, when it comes to it, it's the first thing people want to cut. They want to VE out is catering and food service. Had a Danny with In Vitro here, a food service designer. You know, we had this conversation last night. They come in and they say, but we really want the glass. We really want these amazing seats. We want this tile work. But can you not put these, kitchens in, which is an ROI investment? And most of us now, I think, are going to these events. We know we're inside of the gates. We're inside of the doors. You're not just going to walk out. So you either have to eat before or you have to eat after. And then when you're in, you're stuck there, and you're saying, all I can get is a hot dog. This is not a great experience. I won't mention it again because it's a competitor, but I was just at a football match about a month ago, and I had a hot dog. It was a good hot dog, but the bun was hard. It wasn't hot. The flavor was fine. It wasn't an issue, but it just wasn't something I was excited to pay. In some cases now, 10 pounds, for a hot dog. In the U.S., that's cheap. We charge, $15 for a beer in most of our stadiums. If you do that, it has to be cold. The food has to be hot. It has to be quality. I mentioned it earlier. We work with James Beard award-winning or Michelin star chefs. People expect that it's going to come out, and they'll pay for it, right?
Yeah.
So don't delete the ductwork, and you've got a kitchen, you can't see anything, you can't tell the food story. Delete it, put ventless in, put it up front. There is some noise. There's catalytic converters and different things that give a hum off. But what people see, just like any other kitchen, it's not quiet, right? It's noisy. You have flame. I've seen more fires in kitchens, traditional kitchens, than I've seen on any. I haven't actually seen a fire on a ventless piece of equipment yet. And I've been working with this for about, I actually think it's been about 15 years of my 20 years that I've had ventless in my world. So, it's the ROI is a question that comes up constantly. Mm-hmm. Places globally. We have a arena in Sao Paulo, Brazil that we're developing right now. And the first thing out of my mouth was, what's the reliance on the grid, right? Do we have enough power? Those are the questions that always happen no matter what. But I think when you actually look at the reality of longevity, speed of service, not having to clean, the hoods anymore, doing all these things, the ROI starts to become a lot better, right? But you can't be blinded when you're looking at just cost. It's long-term cost that you've got to explain to the people that are paying these bills, right? It seems cheap today to just do traditional, but what's the longevity of that, and what are the challenges there?
Great answer, Josh. Thank you.
I've got to jump in, and I've got to build on what Josh just said. When you think about the stadiums and arenas, why in the world hide the star of the show, if you will, on the culinary side? It's the sights, the sounds, it's the aromas. You want that. And I got to give kudos to Bill Caruso. It was Bill Caruso's team 6.5 years ago that went to the Little Caesars Arena in Detroit, And they said, you know what, we're going to do something different. We're going to make meal preparation more theatrical. We're going to bring all the ventless stations out onto the concourse area. So Bill's team did that with great success. And it was Delaware North, still the operator. They were interviewed, and it was Ken Gaber at the time, and he was asked the ROI question that you just asked. And when Ken was interviewed and was asked, what's the ROI going to be? His answer was the day we turn the equipment on. These are the stories when you've got unusual areas and high ceilings, it costs a fortune. We need to do the apple-to-apple comparison.
Yeah.
And the last comment I'm going to say, the San Francisco airport hosts a Burger King. It's the #1 Burger King in their roughly 19,000 store franchise. Great. The #1. They did $7 million in 2022, almost $135,000 a week. They wanted to open up another Burger King when the new San Francisco International Airport terminal opened. But when they did the analysis, it was going up 5.5 stories to get to the ceiling for that extraction for that Type 1 hood. The cost for the hood, the angle iron, the ductwork, the compressors on the roof was $361,000 US. Where do you think that project went? It's not happened. We're bringing that back to life. But those are the examples for ROI that are pretty darn tangible.
Fantastic. Thank you, Scott. We've talked there about CapEx costs. Julian, do you want to talk a little bit about OpEx and operation costs for, all we're hearing at the moment in the UK, across Europe, around the world, the soaring price of energy costs. And, it's been stable a little bit, but they also might go up again in the UK. How much do operators need to consider OpEx as well as something like CapEx?
Well, it's. I guess it wouldn't take long to work out. So if you've got a similar footprint kitchen, one with ventless, one with a traditional extraction, so the operating costs for something with a traditional extraction, we mentioned cleaning. It is expensive, and this is me giving back to you today. So in Britain, so if you want to operate a ventless kitchen, you have to have a cleaning schedule that's certified. It's something known as TR19, which is a regulation. And that basically means that you've not got any oily or fatty deposits within your ducting, which at the moment your ducting is integral to your ventless system. So that has to satisfy. And where you'll get pressure there from clients is their insurers. Their insurers will insist on this certificate. So there's like hurdle number one. But I mean, concentrating on your question, it's a no-brainer for me, and it's quite simple. That I would say 9 out of 10 projects, especially if they're refurbishment projects, will not allow. We may not have a suitable ventilation system at the moment.
Yeah.
My last big project last summer was a very complicated affair with new oil waste management as well as ventilation, and we discovered that the existing ventilation. As somebody decided to put a building on top of this building, it's a long story. So this extract ventilation had to navigate around. I don't know how long it was. Might have been about 70, 80 meters, going into a loft of a new converted loft area. And this went through an office. It was a teaching area, and you could just hear the hum of this. So as part of the design, we just basically just severed that and created a brand new air in, air out, immediately close on a bit of flat roof area. So therefore it's very simple mathematics. It does cost a lot of money to maintain and run a traditional extraction system, but I'm just going to say, whilst I'm going to keep the mic from Scott as much as I can, although he's got a magnetic force somewhere, just from an FCSI point of view, this is how we'll see it. We'll see the logic, love it. There's no question there. But we'll have an element. So the the certification, the cleaning, that's important to us. You've got. Don't you help? You've got requirements for the environment. So it's adequately cool enough to work and warm enough in the winter, which gets forgotten sometimes. So there still needs to be some air management in that work environment. And then you've got the noise and extract fumes going somewhere, and the waste oil going somewhere else. So to give you an idea with fats, oils and grease, and sometimes if the regulation said it's 20 parts per million of grease going on a waste thing, and the equipment and the operator can meet that guideline, that's great. So that's number one. If you can tick that box to some degree. Likewise then with extraction, noise and fumes, if that meets a particular regulation, that's expected. So you have a counter argument against all the things that an environmental health or a health and safety executive will ask you about. Just like your experience there going through your, I mean, it was a rival operation, so they weren't, they were just, what were they doing to cause a fire? I mean, that's something to do with fire, burgers, beer. Hey, it's a football game. I think if you get on top of that as operators, designers, and manufacturers, so you can engage with them. And this is the sort of thing FCSI does. We'll get to the nitty gritty. What's the output requirements? What are the essential things? And sustainability, environment, human safety, enjoyment, work environment, as Dan was talking about so brilliantly yesterday.
Absolutely.
It's such a crucial thing. So I've got the mic now. It's
Grab it off.
So yeah, okay. Anyway, but yeah, okay.
He's monologuing. Thank you, Julian. Great. It's a great point. Let's circle back to Scott's previous point about electrification and how you see that changing. What do you think the primary impacts are going to be on the global food service market as we increasingly electrify everything?
I think as much as some of the compliance issues have left people reluctant and having a bit of early concern about implementing the ventless solutions, I think the electrification piece feeds straight into it. And we've not put any gas-powered equipment into a corporate workplace environment for 6 years, something like that.
Wow.
Other sectors are different for various reasons in terms of culinary and experience, but everyone, to a man, is looking at rebalancing their gas-powered versus their electrically powered equipment. We work with a lot of operators who have mandated that they're completely divested themselves of fossil fuels for a number of years.
Yep.
We're seeing it with authorities, as you've already intimated, and that was probably the major stumbling block for ventless because of the combustion fumes. Without that, and with lower extract rate requirements, and with cleaner cooking effectively, and lower energy use, I think those all feed into a message that is opening up great opportunities for ventless cooking. I think that is also sitting alongside the sustainability piece. I think we're at a really exciting time. You go around the show, there is lots of innovation, and long gone are the days where people are doing something that's a bit more sustainable to what they were doing at the last show. People are very, very genuinely competing. And we have clients that are making selections that are sustainability first and then performance. That's not always the case, but we have got a lot of clients who are genuinely looking now at that energy usage and that sustainability piece. And I think there is a genuine argument in terms of ventless feeding into the sustainability argument. Yeah, we're focused using that vent when their plant is on. We're not just pumping vent through the building through an entire day. So I think it is all coming together that we'll see acceleration in adoption.
Great point. To that end then, Josh, how are you at OVG preparing for that accelerating shift? How are you leveraging that kind of movement towards electrification?
Our first building that we opened, that we own, is Climate Pledge Arena in Seattle, which is the first net zero carbon building in the planet Earth. So for us, that was electrification, that was ventless. The entire building is ventless technology. Thank you, Scott, for that. But also, right, it was all about everything that was going on, to Scott's point. So again, as we look at it and we look at these different things happening, we're not forced to do it in some cases. We're doing it because it's the right thing to do.
Right.
And that's been a big thing for us. Is anybody that's ever heard our CEO, Tim Lewicki, speak, Scott's heard him speak many times. We want to save the planet Earth. We want to do the things that people are asking us to do. And so, we're trying to create those sustainable solutions. And ultimately, it's about the guests coming in, having a great time and not feeling it, and then buying into what we're doing. And it's a big selling part for us.
Yes. Great answer. Thank you, Josh. I'm just conscious of time. We might have a few minutes for a few questions from the audience. If you have a question, let me know. Raise your hand. Anyone? Danny?
Josh, you move cooking front of house. Do you see, if you have two restaurants in a venue, one with no front of house cooking and one with all front of house through ventless, do you see it tangible to your bottom line? If it's a cash-based restaurant, do you get more sales?
So we've seen a massive amount of growth from a couple different things that I think ventless has allowed us to do. We've changed your traditional belly up, what we call concession stand in the industry, to a marketplace. And the marketplace allows you to actually enter. If you think about, I don't know if anybody's been to Italy. Italy was kind of an interactive grocery store, right, with upfront cooking. You saw the pizzas going in the oven. You saw the bread being made. We've tried to basically put that show into concessions, right, even if it is a hot dog or a pizza. But we allow you to walk in and we bring it out to the front. So as people are thinking about what they want, they see this equipment cooking these things that we're putting out there. And we put all sorts of chefs' names or local concepts, and it doesn't have to be something we create. But we call it basket size, or our check average has gone up in some cases 30 and 40%. Out of COVID, everybody thought, oh, people are spending because they just have a lot of extra money now. But we've designed differently since COVID. It was something actually, and Ken Gaber, who runs our hospitality team, myself, we've been doing this for 20 years, and we started to ask ourselves, why are we building the exact same way? And so, exactly to Danny's point, if you bring it out front, people see it, they're more enticed to eat it. You got to deliver the quality, and cooking equipment is a big piece of that, right? It has to be hot. It's got to have the right elements. You have to think through what the cooks are doing. You have to think through the customer side. But all of it is to get more revenue going, and we're seeing that at every turn.
And just to build on what Danny's asking, if you bring it out front, are you going to sell more? I think unequivocally the answer is yes. And the example is what Josh talked about with that whole fire issue and trying to get the whole Moody Center up in Austin running. That was a design program by S2O, by Harry Schildkraut in Chicago. And what Harry did, Danny, was he put all of the actual F&B area in that concession area. Because what he realized, what the whole community realizes, the millennials and Gen Zs will wait in line for alcohol. They don't necessarily wait in line for food. So if you put those F&B stations, those ventless action stations there, as you're waiting for that beer or for that glass of wine, and you see that brat or you see that Philly cheesesteak or the burger, you're going to get that incremental ring. And the last point on Moody Center, when Bruce Springsteen filled the seats, 14,000 people, it was $33 per capita just on the food. So we're talking approaching $500,000 in 3 hours. So
wow.
Clearly cooking out in front, you get the return.
Indeed. Okay, that is, I'm afraid, all we have time for. This is clearly a hot topic. I think we could have done about 2 hours on this session. So watch this space for more content on ventless technology, where it might be going in the industry. I'd like to sincerely thank Ed Bircham, Julian Edwards, Josh Pell and Scott Heim for their time, their superb insight today. Thank you for attending. Enjoy the rest of the show. Thank you.